Hey, everybody, this is Richard Ryerson from Dose of Leadership Podcast, and you're listening to Bob Nolly on Labrador Leadership Podcast.
Live from the RVA, this is the Labrador Leadership Podcast with Dr. Bob Nolly. The program that brings you the leadership skills that can make you the most authentic, approachable leader for the sake of your business, your team, and for you. Now, here's Bob.
Ladies and gentlemen, how are you once again? Oh my goodness, you keep finding your way back to us. That's so encouraging.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it.
That is so wonderful. Thank you all very much. Ladies and gentlemen, is episode 8 of the Labrador Leadership Podcast. Oh, that's a big chunky number, 8.
We thank you all for being here. We're very happy to be almost at 10.
10, that'll be a milestone.
Oh,
But we're going to have bigger milestones. There'll be bigger milestones.
We already decided we're going to do this for the next 20 years.
Yeah, so we talked about motivating folks last time. That was a good one. And, well, first, how are you doing? How's your week going?
It's going good. I can't complain. This week was crazy hectic. A lot of things going on. But, you know, I had some time to sit down and think about just some things that kind of in business, you know, had me ticking. How was your week?
It's busy. I think lots of times the first of the year, and folks, it'll maybe February before first folks hear this, but in the first of the year, folks are recharged after the holidays. But I think the budget gets reset, or projects, you know, all those things that folks said at the first of the year, we're going to do this.
Right.
And it's time to start doing that to get off to a good start. And that's important. All right. So what business things have you been thinking about?
Oh, I love just a blanketed business things, really.
Well, that's, you said you gave you time to think about business things.
That speaks volumes, I think. No, you know, I was kind of going back and forth with job opportunities and you know, different kind of things that I'm excited about coming up in the new year. And I started to really sit down and think what made, you know, the jobs that I'm doing very important to me. And a big thing of what I had been kind of thinking about and going back and forth about is, you know, am I more comfortable in position A rather than position B because I trust the company at position A, whereas I don't, you know, in the other place. And so I was just kind of going back and forth and toying with, you know, how I feel about the leadership roles that are above me, you know, and what levels of trust I have there. And, you know, among other things. But so I wanted to pick your brain about trust and just sort of, you know, from your kind of expert opinion.
Well, sure. You know, you said the secret word here in terms of trust. Do you remember, you know who Groucho Marx was?
Oh yeah, my dad was
he had in the late 50s and early 60s, he had this game show. I mean, old school game show on TV called You Bet Your Life. Mm-hmm. And actually, it was just a vehicle for Groucho to do some material. But he would have two guests out of the audience come up and stand at microphones on stage next to him for, you know, 15 minutes while he interviewed them. And it was a quiz show, but there was no board or anything. And his little co-host, George Fenneman, would come out with a tray of envelopes, and they were $100, $200, $300 questions, and Groucho would ask them which one they want. They would chance to earn a little bit of money. All right, but why I mentioned that was in the beginning of the show, his trademark was the duck. And he would have this stuffed duck fall down from the ceiling with a word in its mouth. And if any of our contestants say the secret word, they'll win $100. Oh, that's in 1958 or in 59, you know, $100 was, you know, like what, $5,000 a day? Yeah, let's say $5,000. So it's a word, you know, it's something around this. So they tell them that. And so the duck should have come down when you said trust because it's that important. And, you know, would have given you $100.
Yeah, inflation, you know, all that. But
I have to go. Yeah, I have to go and just say trust is the most important thing, and it's tied to ethics. It's tied to integrity. But and I always think about, can you teach this? A leader you could trust is somebody, I think, first is somebody that has this sense of confidence. They're confident in what they can do. Harry Deutschendorf had a really good article in Fast Company recently. And he talked about leaders needing to be confident in their own abilities. Think about people in your social life. I'll say personal life. I mean, can you imagine being in a relationship with somebody that was not confident? You was always suffering these crises of confidence. What is the buzzword? Confidence is sexy.
Yes, that's very true.
And so if you're not confident, it's going to be tough to work for you. Somebody that's always a little scatterbrained and not sure that the team, the group, the business is doing the right thing. Can you imagine a CEO at the top of the house? That's somebody that's supposed to sell the vision to you, create the vision and sell it to you, and not being confident.
Right.
You're going to start going, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
So that's a problem. That's a big thing for me. Another thing, you have to tell the truth. I mean, you have to tell the truth. If you tell the truth, people will trust you. Now, the thing that leaders struggle with at the middle manager level, at the line level, is this: how to answer questions that they know the answer to that they can't share.
Right.
That's really hard for some. Let me see if I can give you an example. There are rumors, everybody's talking about layoffs, or they're going to be layoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he can't say yes if indeed he knows there are going to be layoffs, and he's been part of those conversations. You can't say yes. But a real leader doesn't say no either.
Leaves the possibility, I suppose.
So your answer has to be framed up along the lines of, I think I've actually used these words, is, if I knew, I couldn't tell you.
Ooh.
If I knew, I couldn't tell you.
That's a good one.
These are tough times, and, the economy and the market is such that we're trying to make some tough decisions.
So if you say,
but we're taking everything into account.
If, say, an upper level manager came to you and said, okay, Bob, there's going to be some budget cuts. You can tell people there's going to be budget cuts. Don't tell them we're going to lay off a quarter of the staff.
Yeah, actually, it's usually worse. It's usually you have to cut 10% of your salary budget.
Oof.
It's like that. But an easier answer, of course, is if I knew of something, I wouldn't be able to tell you. But I'm not aware of anything.
Isn't that kind of stretching the truth?
No. I mean, if you're not aware, if you're not aware, if there's no plans, but the rumor mill's going, you go, if there is something, I couldn't tell you, but I'm not aware of anything. That's different than saying no. Because you may just not be aware of anything yet. You may be on the outside.
Right.
But if you know, you can't tell. You just can't.
It's a tough place to be.
Yeah, it's very tough. It's very tough.
It's easy.
Let's look at the other side of it too. When you have to call somebody in to have that difficult conversation, that just is, of course, a horrible day for them, but it's the bad day for you too.
Right.
Let's talk about a good day. When you get to promote somebody. When you have them in there, if it's concurrent with the performance evaluation cycle and you're going over the feedback and the paperwork from them, and you could say, you've been promoted to senior so-and-so and you deserve it. That's a great conversation you have.
Right.
And, when you have those, it warms your heart, and you want to make sure you just gush all over them in appreciation because this is their moment. But one thing I always like to do is I write their spouses. I've spent 50 minutes talking to them, and when I get done, or the same day because I want to get it in the snail mail, I'll write them a handwritten note that says, "Dear Barbara, I'm sure you know by now that I was able to promote John to senior associate today. I know the work it takes to get that job done, to achieve that promotion. And I know he needed a lot of support from you to be able to achieve that. So thank you for being there for him. I look forward to seeing you at some point during the holidays. Thanks,
That
Bob.
is the sweetest thing I have ever heard.
And
I know you don't see it as a sweet thing, but that is amazing.
it's a good thing. And if managers can get in the mindset of doing things like that. I mean, you talk about the motivation things we talked about. I'm thinking your folks are motivated to do the job for you if you're working for a guy that does things like that. And I didn't come up with that on my own. I learned that from somebody that I worked with. And I remember just locking that in and going, I'm doing that for the rest of my career.
Now you're lucky if you get an email and the person's your boss.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so you have to be confident, tell the truth. The other one, do the right thing. God, that was a Spike Lee joint, wasn't it? Do the right thing.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. I think that's the whole trust. That aligns right there. That's saying your actions have to align with your words. You have to have your actions align with your words. If not, you've shot yourself in the foot already. Here's a tricky point as well, talking about trust. You got to have the message being the same going both ways, going down to your team and up to the senior management team. How's that manufacturing operation going? You look at your team and you go, folks, we're hitting our output goals, but we're having a defect rate problem. And we're going to have to address that. So I'm going to have meetings with each unit to talk about how we're going to affect the defects coming out of there. Looking up to the management team, we're hitting our outlook goals, but we've got a defect problem. And here's what we're doing about it. That's the same message. You're not going to look up at the management team and going, everything's fine. We're hitting our goals. We're shipping the stuff on time and on budget, because someday you're going to be dead in the water, because here it comes. Where are all these defects coming from? Yeah. So the message, the whole point of that scenario, and when I tell these stories, I try not to put too much detail into actually what's going on, but the point is in both directions, you got to be sending the same message.
Funny that you said that about you don't go into too much detail, because I just thought of that entire story in my head as like a Dilbert comic. They're being like, yeah, we're making it on time. We're doing great. And they're just like swimming.
Yeah, that's right. We're doing it backstroking.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing great.
When you learn information, when news becomes available, whether it's good or bad, not necessarily in the layoff situation, but the first question out of my mouth when I've heard something in a meeting is, can I share this with my team? That's like almost a reflex question, because you want to make sure the information you've been given, number one, it's accurate. And you want to make sure you send it out in a timely manner. And that's why I like those little stand-up meetings. Just go, everybody, let's go stand in the hallway here for a minute, or in the front area. Just want to take a minute. I've just heard that this is happening. That's all I know. Are there any questions? Okay. So they get it right away. And that just, that leaves such an impression that you're with them, that you're committed to them.
Right.
That they're as important.
They're so important.
Yeah, they're as important as any other person in that organization.
Right.
But I want to make sure you know it, because you've got to take care of customers, or you've got to ship product, or you be on the phone. You've got to know. You've got to know. What's another thing? Oh, at the top of the house. If we define leader, what the two things leaders have to do, they have to create a vision and they have to sell it. And when I sell it, I don't mean hard sell it. They just have to communicate it to you.
Right.
They have to have values. They have to create a vision. This is what we do. This is where we're going. And here's how we're going to do it. My career has been long enough that, I've been through a couple of economic cycles. And I remember in the banking industry is a tough time for a couple of reasons. I think there are real estate issues, at least regional ones, if not national ones at the time, not the most recent mortgage debacle. But we kept having these big roadshow events where they would get everybody from all over the state into this theater here in town, 4,000 people. And there was a big event, and the senior leadership would get up and speak, and then there'd be a reception afterwards, and they'd ship everybody home. And, when we were having trouble, replacing laptops and things like that, I'm going, why are we spending all of this money on that event? And that's because communicating the vision is important. Because everybody that went there got recalibrated. Everybody right there in that moment going, gee, what's going on with the company? That's when the senior leadership, the CEO, stands at the top and goes, we're going that way.
Right.
And you buy into that.
You can ask for,
Yep. And so, and the values, and this is how we're going to get there.
Absolutely. And so, after you communicate that to them, this is how we're going to get there, then what comes next? You've told them destination is, this X, Y, and Z to, take our company and make it global, or take our company, that any old goal will do. But then what do you do next?
You have to help them relate, help everybody relate to their jobs, what their job means to that process. And you don't do it person by person. You don't even do it job title by job title. You may do it functional unit by functional unit. So the customer service area, every customer contact that we have has to be a positive experience for our customer. And if you think it's not, you find out why and get somebody to help you fix it for them. So there you are. If you find out, if the vision is you want to be the number one in customer service in whatever your industry is, that message needs to get all the way down to the people at the desks, on the phone, wherever you're contacting your customers. And today, that's what more and more companies are trying to get creative about. We hear lots of talk about companies going to a holacracy, which is there's no org chart. Turn the pyramid upside down. Put everything, there in support of the folks in the line, because it's that magic point. Magic's not the right word. The critical point right there where you have that interaction with your customer, where you can add value. Right there is where you make it happen. And you've got to make sure everybody's focused on that moment.
So it seems like the kind of the base of trust within, any sort of organization, it really sounds like communication is kind of the backbone of that.
Absolutely. And, the whole communication issue, how many different kinds of communication do you get on the job? You get email, you get memos, you get phone calls, and you get meetings.
Right.
And we kind of look at them differently in terms of what I call the richness of the media. I mean, contextually, which is the richest one is the face-to-face meeting.
Right.
Because you're hearing it. There's no channel that, can create noise. Right. There's nothing to be a distraction. It's right there. And the most important thing should be delivered that way. And that goes back to the whole roadshow, the big event. That's the rich media right there. If you got a memo about that, folks, it's really important that we concentrate on customer service. Well, that just doesn't hit you with the same impact. But if you get everybody in the same room, even if it's just your team, forget the whole organization coming to town. Even if you just get the 5 people, 10 people, on your team together in the same room and say, this is what's most important to us, and here's how we're going to do it.
Yeah, I think everything from interpersonal to mass communications, really, that link between, communicator and audience is really just an effectiveness. So it's the level of how effective your message is that really kind of drives it home. You could be communicating on a daily basis, face to face with your employees, but if you're not saying, facts, that can be backed up and kind of proven through a timeline, you're just feeding them false information. And then, you're not having an effective communication. So I guess that effective communication is really what kind of drives the trust. But if you muddle in,
yeah, thanks for staying on this point about communication. How many times and how many resumes or CVs or however you post your document of your experience, you say, excellent written and oral communication skills. There are times I just want to go, how do you know?
Yeah. And then you get them in an interview and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, how do you know? Yeah.
You're good at this.
All right. One more thing about trust that bubbled up here. We've kind of expanded about what the core trust issue is. And you could do all of these things we've mentioned, but at the bottom, there's the equity issue that comes to mind as well. And equity means treat everyone fairly. That doesn't mean treat everyone the same. That doesn't mean treat everyone the same. It means treat them fairly. Give credit where it's due. Don't take credit for everyone else's work.
Right.
Yes, as a manager, you get credit for everything that your unit does. You get the blame for everything your unit does. But give credit where it's due. Make sure those folks get recognized. That's a hard pill to swallow for some folks. Wait a minute, you didn't treat me the same as you treated them, but I treated them fairly.
Right.
I mean, does everybody make the same salary in a department? No. More often than not, in the same position, the last person in makes more.
Huh.
The last person in. Generally, in recent economic times, because through growth of the company, salary ranges generally increase over time.
Right. Huh.
So the last person in, that starting salary for that range is going to be higher. So people will go, is that fair? That's why it's not a good thing to talk about salaries, because it would be very easy to foist inequity into that conversation, whether it's fair or not. It just doesn't seem fair. Now, a leader has to be able to have that kind of conversation. So, for example, if you came to a job and earned that job and started at X dollars, and somebody else came in the same position, but they had a bachelor's degree and they made more money, that's not the same, but generally you could say that was fair. Let's take education out of it. Let's say somebody else comes in with 5 years experience and is making more money. Well, that's fair because you're paying for that experience one way or the other. So that kind of covers the trust thing. Now, what have I missed? What holes in it?
Put holes in it.
Yeah. What have we missed?
Well, we covered the confidence. We covered, kind of always the truth being the most important kind of in all tell-all situations. We discussed doing the right thing for the company. We discussed consistency of messages between upper level and lower level and across the board. Timeliness. We covered vision and values and credit. And then we covered a whole lot of communication that I threw in there because you picked a communications buff and I'm obsessed with it. So it comes out a lot. So I apologize for that.
Yeah, that was my undergrad work and I loved it. I just absolutely loved it.
You get a little bit, you start to kind of analyze everything in that aspect. So, pardon me, sometimes I'm going to go off board on it, but that happens.
So
we got it covered.
Yeah, this is a good one. Nicely done. Trust. That came out of nowhere. And thanks to Harvey Deutschendorf for the article. And Harry, if you listen, I hope we hear from you. And actually, I hope I hear from a lot of people. Please, getting some great feedback. So please go and subscribe to the show on iTunes or wherever you find us. Give us a rating review. And I want to hear from you. That's why I want to hear from you. Hit us on the Labrador Leadership Facebook page and give us a post there. Email me, bob@labradorleadership.com, or come find us at the website, because I want to hear from you. Some things are going to start to happen soon where I want to start gathering some things for you, but I want to hear what you need and what you think and what the problems are. If you were sitting in Alex's position right now talking to us, what exactly do you want to hear about?
Absolutely.
We want to hear from you. Hang in there and take care, Alex. We'll see you next time.
All right.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Labrador Leadership Podcast. For the sake of all the special people in your life that deserve you to be the best leader you can be. Connect with us on our website at LabradorLeadership.com, on Facebook at Labrador Leadership, and on Twitter at Lab Leadership. Now, here's a final thought from Bob.
I hope we gave you some good things to think about concerning trust today. We really only scratched the surface. It's that important, not only at work, but in all the relationships in your life as well. Next time, a real leadership freak. We'll see you then.